And we are recording live, but we're not going to be broadcasting live. But this is Carl Monger. I'm the founder and executive director of GallantFew. I'm an Army veteran. And GallantFew every week tries to do one leader chat. During the Patriot Challenge month of February, we have more than one leader chats going on. And the genesis of this goes back to when we started isolating. And everything got locked down in the early days of the COVID pandemic. We decided to do a leader chat every weekday. And we did, I want to say it was March or April, we did a leader chat every single weekday, and 5 a week, huge commitment. And we decided after March that we would make sure that we did it at least once a week. So today it's my honor to have retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Lewis on the leader chat. And we're going to talk about mission transition, which I always go backwards when I'm trying to figure out which way I move with the camera. But mission transition and how do you, I like the navigating the opportunities and obstacles to your post-military career. So Matt, hey, thanks for my freedom. You guaranteed my freedom, my family's freedom by serving in the military, and I deeply appreciate that. And you continue to serve now with the book.
Well, Carl, the honor's mine. Right back at you. Thank you so much for having me. Truly an admirer of what you're all doing there at GallantFew and helping out those trying to make their way in the real world. And I'm just along trying to aid that mission as well. So thanks for having me.
Well, absolutely. Talk a little bit about your military background. What did you do in the military? How long were you in?
Sure. So West Point graduate, class 91. Spent 5 years active as a commissioned as an armor officer. These were the post first Gulf War drawdown years. Didn't see a bright future at that point in time. Decided to leave active duty, but stayed in the reserves. I stayed in reserves another 16 years or so, ultimately retiring about 7-8 years ago now, I guess, as Lieutenant Colonel. Used graduate school as my transition vehicle once I left active duty, and been in the corporate world ever since. We can get into that detail later.
Did you, when you left active duty, this was pre 9/11?
Correct.
So then in terms of graduate school, did you qualify for it wasn't called GI, well, it was a GI Bill then, but not the post 9/11 GI Bill, but how did you fund that since you were West Point graduate?
I paid my own way. When I was on active duty, I used savings bonds as kind of an investment vehicle. Hindsight being 2020, if I'd have put money into the market, I'd probably done far better. But savings bonds were
investing in yourself is always priceless.
Well, savings bonds were a sure thing, and I understood that when you reclaim them, that the proceeds were tax-free. So I applied that to my graduate school education, paid my own way on a tax-free basis. So it worked out for me in the end.
Good for you. Yeah, very nice. That's one of the things that we talk to veterans about. The day one that you go in the military and you start having a routine paycheck, you need to maximize whatever savings plan the government has for you, because then, I mean, look at you were able to fund your master's degree. One of the reasons I didn't go back to school after I got out was because as an ROTC cadet, I had an Army ROT scholarship, and that the ROTC scholarship disqualified me from GI Bill.
Yep.
So as I'm sure that West Point, probably the same reasoning for you. Hey,
Right.
We already paid for your education. We're not going to do it again.
Exactly.
So then follow on was on me. But well, awesome. I want to talk a little bit more about the reserves when we get into some of the transition parts about your book.
Right.
I want to talk about the value of staying in that system. I did it for a period of time until it wasn't economically in my best interest to stay in the reserves. But sometimes I wish that I still had.
Well, the entirety of that value proposition has completely changed as of 2008. We can get into that detail.
Well, yeah, and I'll tell you that part of the problem was the concurrent receipt aspect, right? Because I was a voluntary separation incentive departure from the military, that meant I got an annual bonus for a number of years. And then when the VA awarded me a disability rating, it started reducing that. And then when I did my active duty reserve time, it just like zeroed everything out. And I was spending all this time purely in selfless service because I wouldn't get paid for any of the reserve time that I was doing, and it didn't work out for me. But yeah, we can come back around to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Every now Patriot in the nation has the opportunity to take the GallantFew azimuth check. You don't just have to be a veteran. In the past, we've used it solely as a tool to get veterans into our system, and I asked you to take the azimuth check earlier so that you would get a sense of how that works when a veteran comes in. You should have gotten an almost immediate email back that had your azimuth check results in it. And when we send that, and the benefit that we believe we offer to the entire country right now is any mom, dad, brother, sister, employer, if they want to find out how to improve their own levels of physical fit, or not physical fitness, but functional fitness, they can take the azimuth check, and then they get that email that has links to resources that can help them. In the veteran space, then we make the time within GallantFew to sit down with them, unpack how they assess themselves, and then we put together what we call a plan to be more gallant. And that plan to be more gallant is a way to increase their levels of fitness. And one of the ways that we can do that is by recommending resources like this, depending on how they answer the azimuth check. So just from the perspective of having taken the azimuth check, sorry, I should know better, and I should have all of that silenced, huh? Has experiencing the azimuth check yourself, first impressions, did it make you think about anything, or
for sure? And I'll preface my answer with some context. So my goal is to help eliminate the civil military gap in the country. I'm approaching that through 3 different directions. The book you referenced, Mission Transitions, obviously focused on the military side. I have a second book in the works. My publishers also laid claim to, tentatively titled Hiring Veterans, aimed at the corporate side to help close that gap. But even if you're successful educating veterans on how to do it, educating the corporate side on how to reach out, identify, train, retain, this incredibly valuable talent pool, there's still a missing gap. There's a missing bridge between a service member's last duty station, whatever base post they're on, and whatever local community they settle in. And there are nonprofits around the country. They're known generically as veteran collaboratives, whose purpose is to serve as that warm handoff. And the mission that they serve mimics exactly what the azimuth check is designed to uncover, which is, what are the specific needs that you might have as an individual coming out of your respective service as you settle in your new community? Is that employment? Is it healthcare? Is it financing? Is it, you name it, the list goes on and on. And then what these collaboratives will do is, understanding that inventory, reach out to respective subset of the sea of goodwill, as we call it, in the local area, pull those services in, provide them at a point, time, and place. So what you've done there with the azimuth check essentially mimics that and scales it on a national basis, which is something that's sorely needed, because these veteran collaboratives, rough order of magnitude, there's only about 75 or so fully functioning today in communities around the country. So it's absolutely needed, and something everybody should take advantage of.
The thing that is continues to be a challenge with veteran transition is, from the military, it's a push system.
That's right.
And so those veteran collaboratives that you're talking about, if you are not in that kind of geographical area, when you leave your duty station, when you go home or wherever you choose to live, maybe it's a school that has accepted you, you don't know how to connect with anybody, because it's kind of luck of the draw. Well, I think I'll go to the VFW. Well, that didn't work out. I hated that place, or maybe I loved it, but it's luck of the draw whether you fall into something. And what we hope to do with azimuth check is continue to expand our connections with those veteran collaboratives and other organizations, so that when a veteran does that azimuth check and they put the zip code on there, now we can go, aha, now we have resources in the zip code that we can connect you with. So it's a way to tie that in. We also, on Monday, I'm going to have a conversation with a group out of Wichita, Kansas, that's called Midwest Battle Buddies. And they provide service dog training to veterans. So it's not like the kind of dogs that are going to go turn on lights and the advanced kind of service dog. It's more of a companion kind of dog, but they offer training by volunteers that are professional dog people to help that veteran get the animal to heal, to do the kinds of things that you need it to do. And they don't have a way, as I think most veteran nonprofits do not have a way to assess where a veteran is as they come in. And especially in those 5 areas: professional, emotional, social, physical, and spiritual.
Right.
When you do that assessment, now you kind of have a benchmark of where they are. And now, let's say Midwest Battle Buddies, they're looking at informally partnering with us. So we give them the azimuth check link. They give it to their veterans. We get the azimuth check back as the veteran signs up, and then we pass that information to the volunteer at Midwest Battle Buddy, who then has the conversation with the veteran on what things they can do to help that veteran improve their fitness levels.
Right.
And we want to stay in the loop because we designed the azimuth check, but then we can look for other resources if that veteran needs something. The Midwest Battle Buddies person, if the veteran is really in dire straits in a different area than the companion dog area, well, now they can fall back on us and we can help them out. Right. I would love for the VA to do the azimuth check for every veteran every year, because then not only do you identify where they are today, but now next year, did they improve emotionally? Did they improve physically and spiritually? Right. And right now the VA doesn't do any kind of thing like that whatsoever to try to measure that.
Well, so some potential good news on that front. This is new news, I suppose, but the VA has in pilot right now a program called the ETS Sponsorship Program. It's only being piloted right now in the Army and only a certain number of posts within the Army. Yeah, but the concept is, and this would be revolutionary if they scale it appropriately, which is it gives GallantFew and other organizations like yours the opportunity to reach back upstream up to 18 months prior to the individual's ETS and begin to do the azimuth checks and uncover what's needed so that proactive coaching, guidance, counseling can begin well ahead of the time they actually roll out of their last duty station.
I love it. Yeah, I would. I'd like to. The minute that it becomes available for an organization like GallantFew to be connected with that, we want to be connected with it even beforehand if we can help shape any of the stuff that they're doing. But enough about what GallantFew does. We want to talk about your book and the work that you do with Mission Transition. So again, this is Mission Transition: Navigating the Opportunities and Obstacles to Your Post-Military Career. And do you prefer that people go locate this on Amazon or buy it directly from, do you have a website, or how do you prefer people look that up?
I do have a website, but HarperCollins is my publisher, among the largest in the world. So you'll find that book anywhere books are sold, pretty much. Amazon's obviously the most in vogue and easiest to access these days. But even if you want to go to your local Barnes and Noble, et cetera, you'll probably find that on a shelf there too.
They still have local Barnes and Nobles out there?
They do in some cities, not everywhere. There aren't as many as there used to be.
Somebody the other day, I asked them, did they have a book reading program? Did they do professional development reading books? And they're like, reading what?
Right.
So what I did is I read your book, and I want to say I have a daily habit. In the morning, I get up, I go do a little bit of physical fitness, and then I have a devotional book, and then and it's not a particularly religious focused devotional book. It's more of a Stoic devotional book. So it kind of encompasses all the philosophies. But I do that, and then I have a series of books like with yours. I read one chapter in the morning. And as I go through, I find these little tabs very, very handy, because you can just rip it off from the side of your table where you're sitting and stick it on the piece that's interesting to you. And then you can go back later and identify, certain things that you might want to use as resources. And so I did this even before we talked about doing this interview. So these are the things that I identified as pretty important. The first one that I had in there talks about, I'm going to quote out of your book: your experiences have led to a firm belief that veterans as a group represent one of the most underutilized resources our nation has to offer. They're hiding in plain sight. For the benefit of all, we must unleash the talent within. So what does that mean? For the benefit of all, we must unleash the talent within.
Well, for me, this goes back to, again, kind of my personal purpose and passion is around eliminating the civil military divide. And what's happened over the years is this gap has grown and continues to grow. Let me just first kind of quantify what I mean when I say that. First, I'll throw out some statistics. First, less than 0.5% of the country served on active duty any time post 9/11. That's a stat everyone knows. Moreover, there's been of those that have the jobs to which transitioning veterans aspire, the representation in the civilian world of individuals that have any military experience whatsoever has dramatically decreased over the years. Among executive ranks, it's decreased over 90% since 1980. Now, I know that seems like forever, but for you and me, it wasn't that long ago. Suffice to say, the Wall Street Journal quotes that experience level to be around 2.5% today. So flip that around. If I'm a veteran coming out, interviewing with a civilian organization, there's better than a 97% chance that the individual sitting across the table from me has no idea who I am, what I've done, what I can do. Now, you and I, with the backgrounds that we have coming from the military, we know what we've done. We know what we can do. We may struggle at the time coming out of the service to translate that and have that make sense to someone that's not been in the military, but we certainly have either the hard skills and or soft skills that we can bring to bear and move the needle in that new organization. We just got to find a way to translate that and have it apply in that new organization. So, yes, I think veterans, while there's a challenge we have to cross that divide, and frankly, there's an education need to be done on the other side. That's the point of my second book. There's a ton that we can do, and studies show this. And once veterans actually get engaged in the new organization, just to throw some statistics at you, surveys find that 90% of human resource managers said veterans were promoted faster than their civilian peers. 68% of them found that veterans perform better, or much better than their civilian peers. Now, I'm not trying to create an us versus them point here. That I'm just simply trying to state that there's a ton that we as veterans bring to bear that can truly move the needle in these organizations. We just got to find a right way to translate that and fit in appropriately so that we can thrive.
The very first job that I got out of the military was working for a 7-Up bottler, and the owner, who was second or third generation owner of it, was a Korean War era infantry veteran. I don't think he ever actually went into country in Korea, but he was of that time frame. And when he found out that I was a veteran, he immediately wanted to hire me because you're an infantry veteran too, and you're an officer. So
right.
He immediately knew the skills that I could bring to bear. At around that same time, I interviewed at a huge oil and gas company in the same town, privately held. And their human resource manager, none of the executives there were military type. And she said, you Army officers are good at following orders and doing what you're told, but we value initiative and people that don't need constant supervision. Yeah. And that, I think that it illustrates really the gap. And I think that some of that, it's not intentional ignorance, but unintentional ignorance. I think it's less now than it used to be, but I still think that there is a huge factor of that. And I think that the veteran community over the last almost 20 years has done itself a huge disservice by glorifying things that are violent or that are hateful, or, when you look at, and I've got some friends that do the coffee and t-shirt thing. And I joke with them, you have a brand of coffee that has hate in the word. Yeah. What kind of message are we sending when we do that? And then that non-veteran looks at a veteran, and they got a non-veteran and a veteran to hire, and they're like,
Yeah. No, that's exactly right. There's a lot more positive we have to offer than negative, and we got to start pushing that message.
Have you seen what we're doing with Brigade V?
Say more.
Brigade V. Have you seen what we're doing with this?
No.
Because I need to get you connected to it. Okay. About a little over a year ago, at the end of 2019, I had a veteran who had joined a firm in Oregon, and that firm had they had employee resource groups for every possible group of people except veterans. Yeah. And so he had just joined the network. He took the asthma check, and as we're talking about how does he want to increase his professional fitness, he said, I would really like to start a veteran-focused ERG at my company, but I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Well, one of my other buddies is an Army veteran named Matt, who is in the leadership position with American Airlines Veteran Resource Group.
Yeah.
So I get Matt and this other veteran on a conference call and say, hey, Matt, you have all this knowledge. He needs the knowledge. And Matt's like, hey, anything you want, we'll push to you. I'll mentor you through the process, whatever. And so that got me thinking that there might be a lot of companies out there that are like that, but also there might be companies that are trying to figure out how to hire veterans, or they've hired veterans and had bad experiences. And so if you have an American Airlines that's very veteran focused, would they be willing to share lessons learned? So we created the Business Resource Group Association for Diversity and Inclusion of Veterans. That's the Brigade V part. And there are companies like Leidos and American and State Farm and Schwab that once a month now, the third Thursday of each month, they come together in a conference call, and they're still trying to figure out exactly what the organization is and where it's going. But we've got more representatives of Fortune 500 companies on this call, probably than any other group in the country. And this is something I want to get you connected to it, because we want to continue to build this. This isn't a GallantFew thing. We had the idea, we provide the Zoom link, but these company representatives are the ones that are running with it. And the interesting thing that I found was veteran ERGs and businesses are not limited to veterans.
Right.
So it's anybody that has an affinity for, respect for, or wants to do things within their company to help veterans. And a lot of them, they'll go volunteer. One of American Airlines projects is they went and they packed a bunch of little care packages to send to the troops that were stationed in Washington, D.C. over the last month. And it was phenomenal to see this production line of people that were assembling these bags. But there are groups like that out there that really want to do the right thing with veterans, but there are a lot of them that are struggling trying to figure out how to do that.
Yeah. What you found there is not atypical. And this is right up the alley of my second book. And in research for that, what you found is, in fact, Korn Ferry, in the study they did, 80% of organizations do not have a veteran-specific ERG or veteran-specific hiring program, for that matter. So there's a huge gap there, and that's the whole point of the second book. Much as you're doing with Brigade V, I'm shining a spotlight on a dozen or more organizations that act as case studies, how-to guide for how to build those programs and successfully utilize veteran talent that's coming out, again, to the tune of.
That's one of the discussions there is, right? So there's a very focused effort to recruit and bring veterans in, and then they'll have their own internal couple of week orientation.
Right.
But most of them, even that do that, don't address some of the things that are very, very critically specific to veterans. And a quick example, and you may be familiar with this, is when you're in the Army, well, of course you're familiar with it. You're retired as a lieutenant colonel, right? You go in the military, I have to be a platoon leader. I have to do this job, this job, this job. If you're enlisted, if I get enough promotion points, I can go from E4 to E5. And then if I do this job for a year, I'm an E6. And you can chart your path out, and you can retire at 20 years. Yeah. And unless some catastrophe happens, that is almost guaranteed that you'll attain that rank and that you'll retire at that period of time. Then you step out of that into the corporate environment, and you're like, okay, I got my first job now. In 18 months, what do I get promoted to? And it doesn't work like that.
Yeah. Employment at will is a whole nother scenario. Back to your point, that same Korn Ferry study showed, over 70% of organizations that do have something don't have the ongoing training, mentoring, support that's actually needed. So huge gap. And some of the things you're highlighting with the last part of your comment there, I would characterize them as cultural dimensions. And one of the things that makes transition so difficult, and as I highlight, and I want to say chapter 9, document close to 24 different cultural dimensions that transitioning veterans experience coming out. There's a culture based on values coming out of the service, but those values and that culture could potentially look very different in the organization that you're aspiring to join. And it would behoove you to do some homework ahead of time, try to get a beat on that and what all those differences are, gaps along all of those dimensions, because that's going to hit you, and it's going to have a large part to do with either your rate of retention there or that time frame in which you roll off into another opportunity.
I could talk about that a lot. Personal experience too. But I want to go on to the next. I want to cover a couple of different areas of the book, and in this one, this is I think it's on page 77. I don't remember which chapter it is, but it's talking about an exercise where personal brand statements kind of is the topic, but it talks about as a veteran, you've been indoctrinated to work as a team and focus on mission first. Successful service has been your hallmark since you put on the uniform, but now it's different because civilian organizations don't hire teams, they hire individuals. So now you're in the position of you have to sell yourself, which I know for me personally, very uncomfortable doing that. I like to let my actions speak for me and not have to go out and tell people what I did.
Yeah, it's core to who we are, right? As leaders in the military, selfless service is part of your evaluation report, right? And to the extent that you exhibit that and put your members of your unit first, that's what we're taught, how we're trained. That's not the way in the real world. It's speaking in first person instead of third person. And so that's a big time shift. It doesn't happen overnight. It feels uncomfortable. It feels outright unpatriotic, frankly. I personally struggle with that as well. The only way that I got comfortable with that, and again, it took some time, is just sitting down. I was married at the time. I decided to leave active duty, still married, by the way, same person, but just rote practice, recitation, having her shoot questions at me and me shooting answers back until it got to a point where she as a civilian could begin to understand what I was saying and speaking more in first person than not. I'll never forget the frustration of that experience. And, time, patience, practice is the best thing I would advise there.
Yeah, and that's writing your own bio, so that you can market yourself to others, or even like a resume. It's just tough to do that. And it's too easy to default to I'll just pull my duties and responsibilities off my military evaluation and plug them into my resume. Yeah. And that's the first thing I think that gets tossed to the side because you haven't sold yourself in language, like you said, that's going to be appealing to that hiring person.
Yeah. Again, like I say in the book, make no mistake, the organization is interested in you and what you personally are bringing to bear and how you can help move the needle in their new organization, whatever those bogeys are, to help them be more productive, effective, efficient. They're not bringing on the rest of your team with you. That's just a fact of life.
This next section is in having a plan. Right? It says, as in the military, any mission should begin with a plan. And in this case, we need a plan for building relationships with targets in our network. And it goes on to talk about, I had written a note off to the side that said DoD skill bridge. But one of the things that is critical when you think about what your transition is going to be is seeing where you're going to be on the other end. Right. Everybody gets tired of hearing me say it, but I repeat it so much that Yogi Berra said, if you don't know where you're going, you'll probably end up someplace else. Right. And after a certain period of time in the military, if you really don't know where you're going, you're still going to end up there because you're in a track. Right. But you're outside of that. If you really don't know where you're going, and one of the biggest issues that I see is, particularly on the younger veteran side, having to use their GI Bill to pay for a place to live, but they really haven't thought about what their long-term career is going to be. So yeah, I'm going to study marketing or business. And then 3 or 4 years down the road, they realize this is not what I want to do. Right. Now the resource is gone. Yeah. So focusing on that is huge. But right. That plan, how do you start putting together that plan?
Yeah, so we foot stomp all the time, starting early, and you'll see that emphasized in the book repeatedly. Part of the reason why starting early is so important is to give yourself some time to do the necessary self-reflection to uncover what your personal passions, personal strengths are. Without that, yeah, any road will get you there. You end up wanting to just find a job, not the job, and the importance of that, and more than a job, a career, a series of jobs in a particular field. If you find your optimal field from the outset, again, studies will show you'll more than double your career earnings, rate of retention, job satisfaction. Incredibly important. And one of the main ways to, either confirm or deny your career hypothesis are to leverage programs like SkillBridge. It gets you boots on the ground in that area in which you think you may have an interest. And whether it's a fit or not, it's still a victory. My own personal story, SkillBridge obviously didn't exist back in the day, but I used my internship during my graduate school years to confirm or deny my own career hypothesis. At the time, I thought I really wanted to go into automotive. I had an automotive engineering degree from my undergrad. And so I interned at one of the big 3 auto plants. And within a week, I realized that no way in hell was this going to be, the field in which I work. So that event in and of itself wasn't necessarily a success, but for me, in terms of identifying a potential future career path, it was a huge victory. Without that, I could have, had a false start, which is again what we're trying to avoid, and started in that industry and then have to kick over to another role. So please take advantage of any or all opportunities you have to get exposure to those career fields, even if it's just job shadowing. Take whatever opportunity you have to get boots on the ground, confirm or deny those initial hypotheses such that when you do land in that career field coming out, it's the right one for you.
You were early on talking about investing in yourself. So that's how you paid for grad school.
Yeah.
Think about if you really don't know what you want, but you've invested in yourself while you're in, now you can, maybe combined with a SkillBridge, you can buy yourself some time, maybe a year and a half,
That's right,
where you don't have to go immediately start getting a job. And I believe DoD SkillBridge is open to any ranks. I don't think it's only limited to if you have a college degree or not. But what you have to do is you have to find an organization that's willing to take you.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So you, again, it's back into marketing yourself. But if you choose to go home to where you grew up, and there's a company there you'd really like to work for, then contact their human resource person. Say, hey, DoD SkillBridge, you don't pay me a penny. Government pays me to come, learn and help and maybe be an asset for you. Who wouldn't take that? I mean, that is just such a phenomenal opportunity, both for the corporation and for the individual.
Absolutely.
Having that little nest egg, though, that gives you space to be able to change. In terms of identifying that plan or starting down that path, are there any tools that you've seen that are really effective? The Myers-Briggs type personality assessments, things that say you should be a painter or you should be a brain surgeon based on taking some multiple choice questions.
Yeah.
Is there one that you think is effective?
Well, I wouldn't narrow it to one. I offer 3 in the book up front, and this is all part of the first chapter or 2, which just to give some context to this, you want to first focus on what before you focus. First focus on who before you focus on what. And part of who is understanding who you are as a person, what are your personal strengths, personal passions, what gets you out of the bed in the morning, such that if you're able to connect that with the career field, again, in theory, you'll never go to work a day in your life. You'll just be working utilizing your passion all the time. And there's, again, 3 or 4 I call out in the book. I urge you to take at least 2 of those because reinforcing feedback along the same lines will give you some confidence that your azimuth is pointed in the right direction.
Yeah, nice. That got me thinking about it. It almost just slipped out of my mind, but it had to do with kind of identifying that. It was probably brilliant, but
yeah, no worries. Just to foot stomp the who versus what. Dick Bowles, who wrote "What Color's Your Parachute," over decades he did these surveys, and what he found was those that focused their job search, career hunt on who first were successful 86% of the time. If they focused on what, which is frankly the way that the TAP program works today, put your MOS into a skills translator, and ergo, as a tanker, I should have been a cop or a truck driver or something. Yeah, nothing against those professions, but that had nothing to do with what I wanted to do. If starting with what, you're only successful 26% of the time. So, I mean, I'm no genius, but if I'm going to Vegas, I'm going to bet the high numbers, right?
That reminded me exactly what I was going to say, because one technique is to think about, if I had $1 million, what would I do?
Yep.
Right. And
right.
Sitting on a couch and playing video games doesn't count. If you had $1 million, you could go do something, what would it be?
Right.
then maybe go start pursuing that as a potential career path, because that might lead you to get that $1 million, right? Otherwise, you're a slave to whatever job, whoever happens to need you at this point in time. And it's not something that's super fulfilling. Yeah. We've been talking for about a half hour. I sure appreciate it, Matt. It's great to talk about your book. I want to bring you back because I want to explore. I still got more tabs in here that we didn't get through. Oh, yeah. And you have more to do it. But what did I not ask you that you want to make sure that everybody knows?
Well, one last thing I'll end on, which is, and this is new news as well, I recently published, and you'll find it on my website, MatthewJLewis.com, a series of video courses. I've broken the book out, and it's intended to augment, accompany the book. It's not intended to replace the book, but there's 21 free video courses out on the website, in addition to a whole bevy of resources that accompany the book. HarperCollins, my publisher, ended up having a word limit to my surprise. And so a full quarter of the original manuscript is out under my resources tab, all there for free, and all intended to be used in conjunction with the hardback book.
And that's Matthew J. Lewis.
Yep. Last name Louis, like St. Louis.
Okay. That's one of the things we need to get included into our asthma check response. And when you look at that email that comes back, click on the link. We call it a GallantFew primer.
Okay.
Each one of those statements. So, for instance, if where it says I blame myself for everything that happens, if you want that score to be lower, if you want to reduce your levels of blame, then here's a video to watch. Here's maybe some articles that you can read. Here's a resource that might be able to help you with that.
Right.
Take a look closely at that and see where it might make sense to fit your link in, so that we're sending people to check out those videos as well.
Okay, great. We'll do.
Well, Matt, it's awesome to talk to you face to face. I think we talked on the telephone before. So again, thank you for my freedom. Thanks for your continuing leadership and the things that you do to help veterans transition. Because one last thing, I get a little bit on a soapbox on this, and I have for the last 2 months. When you look at what's going on nationwide, it doesn't matter what political sign I put in my front yard right now. Election's done. It ain't going to change.
Right.
There's nothing. Whether there was fraud or not, none of that stuff matters. Because I mean, it might matter, but I can't influence it.
Right.
Right. What is the one thing that I have absolute control over? That's what's between your ears, because you can make choices. You can choose to be happy or sad, and I believe that you can make those choices. Too many times we drive ourselves into, I have to be angry because of what I see on the news, or I have to have post-traumatic stress because of my deployment to Afghanistan. No, you don't. So let's talk about ways to change that. And the next thing that you can really influence are the things that you can really put your arms around. And that's your family. That's the people that you know and interact with at work. If you go to the gym and you have a group of routine people there, or at your church, or wherever you get with other people, that is what you can influence. And it's not what can you do to change their mind. It's what can you do to help them.
That's right.
If you can put your mode into service and helping others, and we do it across the country. And that's what I love so much about the theme of your book, because we take what we know as veterans and as leaders, and we set the right example. And if we set the right example and do the right things, then other people will too. One of the reasons we let the asthma check go to anybody, because if we can raise all of our collective fitness levels, professionally, emotionally, spiritually, then our country will be better off, and we won't drive it, off a cliff. So I appreciate your role in pulling that around too. I also would be remiss if I didn't say before we got done that through the month of February, GallantFew has Patriot Challenge. I'm wearing my Patriot Challenge shirt today. And that is the evolution of Run Ranger Run, where people come together and in teams commit to every one of them doing an average of 2 miles of something every day in February.
Wow.
I'll tell you what, if you have not been used to a daily fitness routine and you say, I'm going to go for a 2-mile walk every morning, it is challenging to do that. But once you start making those lifestyle changes, other things it's amazing what a walk of 2 miles will do to change your entire outlook and the way that you feel. It's amazing. So anyway, PatriotChallenge.org is the website. Even though we're into February, anyone can still join at any time. And I've got a team called Goofus or Gallant. Back to the old Kids Highlights magazine. Are you Goofus and do the wrong things? Or are you Gallant and do the right things? So you pick, are you Goofus or Gallant? And you can join my team if you want. But Matt, again, thank you. I appreciate you being on GallantFew's Leader Chat.
Glad to do it. Glad to be here. Thanks for all you're doing, Carl. Look forward to coming back and sharing more. There's a lot more we can unpack.
Absolutely. All right, you're going to be a resource. We're going to be talking. I almost forgot. Be brave, be bold, be gallant.